In 1980, Barbara Tucker was a 19-year-old sophomore studying business at Gresham's Mount Hood Community College. While on her way to the campus on January 15th for an evening class, she unexpectedly rushed out of a largely forested area on Northeast Kane Drive. A number of vehicles had to brake and swerve to avoid running over the young woman, and one driver had nearly lost control. Barbara was swinging her arms at passing automobiles, her face smeared with blood and mud, but nobody stopped. Not long after, from the wooded area came a strange man who hurried off, grabbed Barbara by her arm, and took her back into the forest. Afterwards, a few witnesses would claim to the authorities that they mistook it for a youthful game of dodging traffic or just college students pulling some silly pranks. The following morning, Barbara's body was discovered in the shrubbery by a fellow student who was heading to class. Clothed partially, she had been beaten to death as well as assaulted. None saw that strange guy, and for almost half a century, many people, including Barbara's own siblings, believed he'd never be located. Who was this odd man? What did he have to do with Barbara? And why has it taken over 4 decades to solve this case? In Portland, Oregon, on February 25, 1960, Louise and Albert Tucker gave birth to a daughter. She was the youngest of 7 children, and her parents named her Barbara May Tucker. Barbie, as her family affectionately referred to her, was robust, tall, and athletic, which she used to her advantage by playing basketball for the Cleveland High School. As a member of Distributive Education Clubs of America, a society for students passionate about business and retail, she took part in a nationwide competition and earned awards. Throughout the summers, she used to work at Sears. She was described as playful but ambitious by family and friends. In the Tucker family, she was the first one who attended college. Barbara enjoyed playing the guitar and writing poetry and songs. Her goal was to obtain a business degree, and then one day, owning her own craft supply store. Barbara was the beloved of the Tucker family, yet she was independent from the start. After completing high school, Barbara relocated to Gresham and enrolled at Mount Hood Community College there. Tragically, Barbara's life was cut short at the age of 19, barely 2 years into college. On the evening of January 15, 1980, Barbara had a consumer credit practice class. She'd informed her mother regarding her plans for the night. It was a cold and rainy night, but she had planned to go get some ice cream with a friend after class. Driving by, witnesses spotted Barbara bolting onto Northeast Kane Drive from the wooded area on the west end of campus. They assumed she was waving at somebody, trying to gain their attention, but no one bothered to make sure. A witness remembered seeing Barbara being led back into the forested area by a male. The next time Barbara was spotted, she was lying deceased within those dense woods. She was partially dressed, and her handbag and books were discovered besides her body. The police responded promptly, and a medical examiner concluded that she had been severely beaten and physically assaulted till she drew her last breath. An investigation was started, but nothing came of it. Even with so many eyewitnesses, there wasn't any evidence to support the case. The unknown man's appearance remained a mystery to all. As time passed, Barbara's case started becoming cold, whilst her family members found it difficult to move on. Albert Tucker, Barbara's father, did not handle her passing well. When the family learned of the devastating news, his other kids claimed that it was the first time they had ever seen their dad cry. Throughout the ensuing weeks, months, and years, Albert's grief at his daughter's demise was evident. Every time someone brought up Barbara, he would instantly exit the room. Sadly, he died in 1989 without ever finding closure. However, Louise Tucker, her mother, dealt with her pain and sadness in a different way. Everything that Barbara had left behind, she held on to. She picked a single yellow rose and planted it in the backyard of the family house. Every spring, the rose bush would bloom, growing strong and tall like Barbie. Louise frequently wrote letters to the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office. In the 1980s, Norm Frink held the position of Chief Deputy in the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, which handled the case. Norm talked about how often Louise wrote to the office and how he was becoming frustrated that the case seemed not to be progressing. Louise passed away in 1995. However, she denied herself forgiveness until her last breath. She had given Barbara permission to move to Gresham for college, and she thought that was why this incident happened. On January 15, 1980, it had been raining that evening, and the Tuckers thought Barbara had taken a ride from an unknown person to get to her campus. Louise persistently bemoaned the possibility that Barbara might not have entered a stranger's vehicle if she had attended a college nearer to her home. Had she been dropped off by one of her siblings, she would still be alive today. All of Barbara's friends grew older and started pursuing their goals, but she stayed 19 in memories and photos. Maria Adrienne, Barbara's closest friend from childhood, was deeply impacted by Barbara's demise. After Maria got married and had kids, she watched with bated breath as her kids grew up and passed the milestones that Barbara never had the chance to. She said she could finally breathe after her kids had finished college, got married, and started their own families. With time, Barbara's case got older and eventually became Gresham's oldest unresolved homicide case. But that was about to change. In 2000, vaginal swabs obtained during Barbara's autopsy were forwarded to the Oregon State Police Crime Lab for examination. From the swabs, the crime lab created a DNA profile. Never giving up on Barbara's case, the investigators collaborated with Virginia-based genetic genealogist C.C. Moore, who heads a group known as DNA Detectives. After the DNA sample from the crime site was added to the GED match database, a match was found. Ultimately, in 2021, Robert Plimpton was identified as a possible contributor to the unidentified DNA profile created in 2000 by a Parabon Nanolabs genealogist employing DNA technology. Upon discovering that Robert was residing in Troutdale, Oregon, detectives from the Gresham Police Department set out to monitor him right away. Robert spit a piece of chewing gum into the ground as the investigators were watching him. They retrieved that gum and sent it to the OSP Crime Lab. The laboratory found that the DNA profiles derived from Barbara's vaginal swabs and the chewing gum matched. Robert Plimpton was taken into custody on June 8, 2021, while he was driving away from his Troutdale residence, and was then held at the Multnomah County Detention Center. He faced charges of taking a life, assault, and sexual assault, and was incarcerated on a $500,000 bond. This marked the very first arrest in the case of Barbara Tucker, which had been ongoing for 41 years. Robert Plimpton's wife, Lisa Plimpton, said her husband was taken aback by the arrest and refuted the allegation that he took Tucker's life. She added when word of Barbara's death circulated, she and her husband were students at Reynolds High School in Troutdale, ages 15 and 16. Lisa claims that Robert only became aware of Barbara from the news. In the decades that followed Barbara's passing, Robert's criminal record had grown significantly. According to court documents, he has been found guilty of fourth-degree assault thrice, kidnapping twice, and numerous other traffic infractions, including driving while intoxicated. He was found guilty of second-degree kidnapping in Multnomah County in 1985, and the Oregon Department of Corrections states that he served a 30-month sentence for the crime. In addition, he completed 2 6-month terms for counts of DUI and parole infractions. Court documents from Oregon also indicate that Robert was taken into custody by Portland police in 1997 on charges that bore similarities to Barbara's case. He was charged with assaulting and attempting to assault a woman. According to court documents, detectives had a suspicion that Robert had taken her to a remote location and assaulted her. Afterwards, a wounded and sobbing woman was discovered by an officer. A grand jury determined there was not enough evidence to bring a criminal complaint, so the case was dismissed. Lisa insisted that her husband had changed his ways and had been clean for 25 years. Robert and Lisa had been married for 18 years, and they even had a son together when he was arrested. Barbara's assailant had been so close for more than 4 decades, and yet nobody knew about him. This disturbed and disappointed Barbara's friends and family. Troutdale was located 16 miles east of Portland and barely 6 miles northeast of Gresham. Robert had entered a not guilty plea while maintaining that he did not match the suspect's description. Beginning on February 26, 2024, the trial continued through March 15th. Stephen House handled Robert's defense, while Chief Deputy District Attorney Kirsten Snowden and Senior Deputy District Attorney Todd Jackson represented the state. In lieu of a grand jury, Robert's defense requested a bench hearing before Multnomah County Circuit Court Judge Amy Baggio, and the assault and slaying trial of Barbara Tucker commenced. Attorney Kirsten Snowden stated to the court that there was insufficient evidence to prove any connection between 16-year-old Robert and 19-year-old Barbara. The defense maintained that there was a clear and presentable plausible doubt as to who took Barbara's life. Both the state's witnesses and the eyewitnesses from the scene attest that the man they saw forcing Barbara back into the bushes was about Barbara's height, and some said he was taller. That should make the suspect nearly 6 feet tall, if not taller. But Robert was just 5 feet 8 inches tall. The defense further emphasized that the chewing gum the detectives picked up off the ground was the sole piece of DNA evidence they could provide. Robert's clothing was not tested in order to validate the OSP Crime Lab's findings. Judge Amy Baggio rendered her decision on March 15, 2024, disregarding these arguments and finding Robert guilty of 1 count of first-degree murder and 4 charges of second-degree murder based on multiple factors. The judge explained that Robert was acquitted of the assault allegation because the prosecution was unable to establish beyond a reasonable doubt that he had assaulted Barbara while she was still alive. But there's no denying that Robert struck Barbara till the 19-year-old passed away by beating her in the head and face. He is presently being held in Multnomah County as Judge Baggio considers his sentence. When the police first told Barbara's siblings that they had made their first arrest in her case, they expressed relief and excitement. Following the announcement of Robert's verdict, 2 of the Tucker family members present at the verdict hearing broke down into tears and gave each other hugs. Alice Swan, Barbara's older sister, said that she used to think the case would never be solved. Now that the long cold case has finally been solved, she and her family are happy. After 44 years, and without their parents around to witness it, their Barbie had at last received justice. Assigned to the cold case in 2015, Detective Aaron Turnage was instrumental in the case's resolution as he sent the DNA extracted from the original crime site to Parabon Nanolabs, LLC, for the creation of a DNA profile. It was thanks to this profile that Robert Plimpton became identified as a possible suspect. It took several years, but finally a strong enough match was made to point us in the direction of the Plimpton family, Turnage said. Claudio Grandjean, the acting chief of Gresham Police, commented on the importance of cracking the case, saying, "With a case like this, there is a large wound to the family. Secondary, there's a wound to the community and a wound to the police department. We get a chance to heal all of those." The community's response to the case's breakthrough brought to light Barbara's murder's long-lasting effects, as well as everyone's relief that justice had finally been done. If you find this video compelling, show your support by giving it a thumbs up, subscribing to our channel, and ringing that notification bell. By doing so, you'll stay updated about the latest investigations and mysteries. Your support means the world to us as we continue to pursue the truth in the world of cold cases.